Okay, so today we'll be talking about React portals, and in this case, we'll be demonstrating that with the tab component. So, if you don't know what a tab is exactly what we have on screen here, which is basically buttons that are ordered in this fashion, and if you click to switch like the contents in a nutshell. So looking at this structurally, we can tell that, for every button, it has to be a corresponding content. So every button is mapped to the content, and from the components we have here, which is the profile tab page, we can see that it takes in some prop. But the most important thing to note here is there's a tab button which contains a text profile, and we have some states that conditionally renders the content. So in this case, the content is the edit profile form. Now, we don't care too much about the content of this edit profile form. The idea here is to focus more on the tab functionality itself. Now, in a case where we do have some layout where we have to render the tab contents and tab buttons, let's assume that this is the layout. So we have a nav and some section. This represents a nav and this represents a section. And the goal is to put all the buttons here at the nav section, and to put all the contents for each button. When they click on them, they basically render here. And this seems like pretty straightforward. And from this style, from the portal style, the idea here is to portal all tab buttons to the parent or respective containers rather. So all buttons would be nav and would be placed in a nav, and every tab section would be placed in a section. Now, to give like a sense of what's going to happen when the profile mounts, we're going to add another tab section or content where now we have two instead of just one. Now we have profile and we have notifications. Those are two different pages, and they would both be mounted at, say, different times or at the same time. Doesn't really matter. But if I was to mount the profile component, the one I shared earlier, this is exactly what happens. So the section we reserved for the nav, which is the nav, takes in the button, and then the other section takes in the tab content, and afterwards we mount the notification, and the same basically happens for that as well. So this is basically the idea of how the contents will be ported to different sections of the DOM when they are mounted. Hi everyone. So from the last video, which is like the intro, which I'm doing like some days later, we have the nav, and then we have like the section containers, and this is the browser app, my browser. So that's basically what I'll be using for this demo. So what I have here on the right side of the screen is the code that's for this, and at the root of this component, which is the layout component, what we have is a main and then a div. So just to give you a sense of where the div is positioned, I'm just going to add some border here and then a bit of padding. So yeah, at least it's clear what the purpose of the div is for. Now what we have over here is like two sections, one for the nav container and the second for the actual contents of every tab button. I've taken the time to basically create like some components, right? So I created like a few components just for this demonstration, right? And yeah, so the section badge is one of them, and that's basically what shows this when I hover on a section. And if I take that out, you won't see anything for that section. So yeah, that's just so I can explain with more visuals as the plan is. Now, for this, we mentioned that we are supposed to get all the buttons here. So I'll just basically add the buttons that I've created before now. So in this case, there'll be two buttons, one for the notification page and another for the notification for the profile page rather, and another for the notification page. So doing that, we see those buttons on screen, right? And then for the contents, I've also created the components for that as well, which you could also see when you clone the project and say look through. So I would also I'll do this and save, so you'll see the content. So this is the content of the profile page, and that should only come in we should only see that when the profile page is active, and also when the notifications page is and we should see the one for the notifications page when the notifications page is active. All right, so I'll just add that now, and we just basically see everything at a stretch. Now looking at this, I would just basically take out the notifications button and also the notifications page rather, and the page and the button. So what we'd have here is just the profile and its content. Now the plain old way of doing this is basically adding a state for the current tab, right? So let's say, oh, we have tab and then we have set tab, which is the getter and the setter for React state, right? And the initial state would be, say, undefined, because that's basically what happens when you don't provide any arguments to the useState function, or the useState hook in this case. So I'll just basically do something quite simple. So when we click on the profile button, then we want to set our tab, or the current active tab, to the profile page, to the profile, right? So that would be denoted with a profile string here, right? So we're also supposed to do the same for the notifications, but that's like after this is done. And we only want the contents to appear when the tab itself, the state, is basically equivalent to profile. So if it matches profile, then we want the contents to appear. So other than that, the buttons are always supposed to remain in the nav container until it's clicked. So I'll just basically do that right now. I'll click on profile, and then we see like the content. So I don't think I need this section badge anymore, so I'll just basically take it out, so we could actually see this clearly, the content for the profile content, the profile content box. All right, so okay, so yeah, so TypeScript is complaining right now that it says the argument of type string is not assignable to the parameter of type, whatever that is. So I think I just basically have to specify the state, the data type, or the type for the state. And currently the plan is quite simple. The state, or the type of the state, is meant to be string, right? So it stops complaining right now. Now the funny thing that happens is whenever we refresh the page, we don't get like any content, simply because our state is still empty, right? It's undefined, it doesn't match the profile. So what I'll do next is just basically set our initial state to profile. So even after refreshing, all right, so I've refreshed like a couple of times, but I'll just do this so you can see you sets like the profile page as the initial page. So which means the initial render, we would see the profile content. So since this is working as expected, what we'd have to do next is add the active state, simply because when I switch to profile, I switch to notification, I can't tell which is active, right? Although I can infer from the content, but I can't actually tell. I need to add that visual there. So for most people, they prefer to say basically add an is active property, right? For this case, I wouldn't be doing that. So what I'll be using is data active, and all I'll do is set it to true or false, depending on which page or tab that is active. So in order for me to do that, I would need to get the tab state and say, oh, if this tab state matches the text profile, then the profile is active. And if it matches the text notif, then notif is active. So currently, you can see that notif is active. And if I click on the profile, then we'll see like the profile is the currently active tab. Pretty cool. So the next thing here is to add the button for notification, right? Now I guess I could just set this to notif. I could duplicate this and then call that notif as well, and then I'll call this, the component that's meant to render is the notification component. So there it is, easy peasy. I could click on notifications to switch notifications. I could click on the profile to switch back to the profile page. Pretty straightforward. Okay, so since this is working as expected, what we'd have to do next is add the active state, simply because when I switch to profile, I switch to notification, I can't tell which is active, right? Although I can infer from the content, but I can't actually tell. I need to add that visual there. So for most people, they prefer to say basically add an is active property, right? For this case, I wouldn't be doing that. So what I would be using is data active, and all I'll do is set it to true or false, depending on which page or tab that is active. So in order for me to do that, I would need to get the tab state and say, oh, if this tab state matches the text profile, then the profile is active. And if it matches the text notif, then notif is active. So currently, you can see that notif is active, and if I click on the profile, then we'll see like the profile is the currently active tab. Pretty cool. Looking good. Looks like we have basically implemented the tab in the simplest way possible in using React. So yeah, I guess this is the first phase. We're done with the first phase, right? We could successfully switch between tabs, and that is made possible using just a use state hook. So yeah, on to the next one, which is going to be slightly more complex than something so simple, but yet there are like benefits to that. Yeah, so let's dive right into it.